Welcome. This is about ratios and proportions. Who is the father?
On a clean page in your notebook, make sure you title it Ratios and Proportions. Make sure it's the next page in your notebook so that it's organized, please. Okay, enough silliness for now. Okay, what are ratios and proportions? So we need to do a quick review from last year. So the first thing we need to talk about is what a ratio is. And a ratio is a comparison between two quantities or two amounts. So I want you to write that definition, and we're going to highlight or underline ratio, okay? So ratio is a word we're going to be using a lot. A ratio is a comparison between two amounts. The next thing that you need to know is that some ratios compare two parts, and those are called part-to-part ratios, or sometimes we compare one of the parts to a whole. For example, we have 3 girls to 2 boys. That's a part-to-part ratio. We're comparing girls to boys. They're both parts of the whole. Okay, so we would write that ratio as it can also be changed to a part-to-whole ratio. So for example, if we wanted to know how many boys to students, well, how many boys were there? There were 2 boys. And how many students? Well, that's when we have to change it and figure out the whole. So 3 plus 2 is 5, because girls plus boys make up students. So in order for us to figure out the students here, we would have to add the parts. Okay, then, oops, my box is coming with me. If I wanted to find the ratio of girls to students, well, how many girls do I have? 3. Students is still 5.
3 out of 2 people have trouble with fractions and ratios.
Okay, now we're going to talk about what a proportion is. So skip a line in your notebook. Let's write the definition of a proportion. So proportion is simply when 2 ratios are equal. So you'll hear that word a lot. Is it proportional? The mathematical definition is that the 2 ratios are equal. So proportions are also used to find unknown amounts. So for example, if the ratio of boys to girls is 3 to 2, how many girls would there be if there are 66 boys? So we have to keep the ratio 3 to 2 going essentially until we get to 66 boys. So what would that look like? What we want you to do when you're setting up these problems is we want you to set them up with words, okay? And then we're going to set up our known ratio and then our unknown ratio. So write those 3 words you see there in blue. Words, known, unknown. Now the words, or the 2 things we're comparing, is boys to girls. So make sure that you write the ratio in words, boys to girls. And then what is our known ratio of boys to girls? Well, how many boys did they tell us in the ratio? 3 to 2. So make sure that when you see in a word problem, it says ratio of boys to girls. Okay? When you see the numbers that follow it, 3 to 2, it goes in the same order. So we see that boys came first, and the first number was 3. So when we set up our known ratio, okay, our known ratio is 3 boys to 2 girls. So it's 3 to 2. Okay? Now our unknown ratio, so this ratio right here, let me just point this out for a second. This ratio right here, 3 to 2, this comes from the problem. It's known. It's the ratio they give us. Okay? Now our unknown ratio here is from the question. Okay? So there's going to be something that I know here because they're asking, for example, 66 boys, that's part of the question. But I don't know the other part of the ratio. So when I set this up, what I don't know is, let me see. So the question says, how many girls? That's the question. How many girls? I don't know how many girls. That's what they're asking me. I don't know. So that's why lined up with my girls is X. Okay. Then I also know, let's see, how many girls would there be if there are 66 boys? Okay. So that's what they're asking me. So 66 boys, this ratio, 66 boys to how many girls? Okay, so I want these ratios to be equal. 66 to something needs to be equal to 3 to 2. These two ratios need to be equal. That is what a proportion is. When this ratio and this ratio are equal, right? I have the equal sign there. Then that's called a proportion. Okay, so there are a couple ways you can solve. So what I want you to write now is put a little note that you can solve by, so we can solve using cross products or by multiplying or dividing. And so what I'm going to do is show you both ways, because sometimes it's going to be easier to use cross products and other times it's going to be easier to just multiply or divide, similar to how you would do equal fractions. Okay, and so I want you to look at the picture that I just inserted on the screen. You will see that this picture represents the ratio 3 boys to 2 girls. So there are 1, 2, 3 boys, and there are 1, 2 girls. Okay, so think about this picture. That is the ratio that is known. So here's our known ratio. And our unknown ratio is we want to know how many girls there would be if there were 66 boys altogether. So what you need to think of is how many times would I need to copy and paste this picture right here? Let me undo something. Okay, I think I got it now. So think about how many times would you have to copy and paste that picture so that there were 66 boys all together. I could keep doing this, but this is going to get old soon. Okay, so you need to think about each as a set. Okay, so for example, when I only have 2 groups, there are 3 times 2, there are 6 boys. If I have 3 groups, I'm just going to push this off to the side. 3 groups, I'm going to have 3 times 3, which is 9 boys. So if I have 4 groups of the picture, 4 times 3 is 12. How many times do I want to do that? I don't want to keep drawing or copying and pasting or writing down the information, but let's think about how many sets. How many times would I need to have this picture? How many sets to have 66 boys? So let's think about what math you would do here. And the math is, let's think about how many sets we would need and what we would multiply or divide by. So I know that I'm going to be multiplying because I only have 3 boys in my picture now and I want 66 altogether. So if I take 3 and I multiply it by 22, that equals 66. So that means I'd have to copy and paste that picture 22 times. Well, it's a good thing I have a shorter way because I did not want to do that. So 3 times 22 is going to equal 66. Well, if I copy and paste that picture 22 times, I can figure out how many girls there are. I'm going to have 22 of those pictures. Each one had 2 girls in it. So 2 times 22 is 44 girls. You need to make sure that you're multiplying or dividing your ratios. The other strategy, which is called cross products, I'm going to show you how to do it that way. And this is going to be helpful for when there isn't a whole number of sets. So for example, when we have two equal fractions or two equal ratios, the cross products are going to be equal. So, for example, we're going to multiply diagonally. So 3 times x is 3x. And then we're also going to multiply 2 times 66, which is 132. And those two cross products are going to be equal. Okay, so whatever 3 times x is, it should equal 132. Well, you know how to solve for x here. You know how to solve equations. So we are going to 3 times something equals 132. So let me just draw my flow chart quick for those of you who know what this is. So x times 3 is 3x. So to figure out what x equals, I know 3x equals 132. So when I backtrack, I'm going to divide by 3. And 132 divided by 3 is 44. So here we know x equals 44. And I just look back up here. X is right here. That lines up with girls. So I know my answer is 44 girls. So in conclusion, what I want you to take away from today's lesson is that we have ratios that equal other ratios, and those are called proportions. And when we set up a proportion, what we want to see are the ratio in words. We want to see your known ratio and your unknown. Okay? So use this to help you solve your problems today.